Hey everyone, welcome to the PocketCast, Pocketnow PocketCast, episode 5. Today we have with us Evan Blass, our managing editor. Say hi, Evan.
Hey guys. Hey Brandon.
And senior editor Tony, also known as Anton D. Nagy. Say hi, Anton.
Hey guys, hey Brandon, hey Evan.
All right, so again, we are excited about this podcast because it's everywhere. It's on YouTube, it's on iTunes, it's on Zune. So you have so many options to listen to this because I know a lot of people want to have a lot of choices in how they get it on their device or whatnot. And of course, we're going to look into a way to get this on Android also in the near future. And in this episode, we're going to do things a little bit differently. Towards the end, we're going to take some Twitter questions. Just about an hour ago, I asked people on Twitter, do you have any questions for us for our Pocket Cast? And we got a big handful of questions, so we're gonna do that. So, as we always like to do, we're gonna start off with something that made the news this week, and we're going to go from there. So, starting off, we're gonna talk about the Amazon App Store on 20 February, which was, let's see, what day of the week was that? Sunday. So a week ago yesterday, or today, since today's Sunday, we record on Sunday and post on Monday, got some news from Amazon explaining how their App Store, which we still don't really understand why they're doing this, is going to tie into Amazon.com. So they're going to have recommendations when you're viewing one app. It'll say, other customers bought this, check it out. When you search for, say, other pieces of software, maybe for your Mac or for your PC, you'll get results for Android apps. But what's still totally unclear is why Amazon wants to do an app store.
They think they can do it better. Amazon has quite a history of, they're the best at putting together a product page and, putting everything pertinent on one page. And they think they can do that for apps too, apparently.
But I agree. I mean, they've got so much experience in commerce and recommendations, but like me as an Android consumer, I want to use the Android market because it's got so much choice. So they're at a huge disadvantage because they're starting from zero here, and the Google app marketplace is at 150,000. So they're going to have some really compelling features to woo developers and consumers.
What if they offer developers a better cut? I mean, that alone could, you know what I mean?
That's
more attractive.
That's true. Better terms. So they could presumably start a war in the app stores. All the developers right now get 70% on Windows Phone, on iTunes, and in the Android market. And if Amazon were to undercut all of them, go to 15%.
Although I guess, most of the ecosystems are locked down. You couldn't have an alternate app store unless you were catering to jailbroken devices, and I think the same is true on Windows Phone.
So you're saying that you couldn't install a new app store onto your AT&T Android phone?
No. You could with Android, but I don't think it would be possible with other platforms. Like
right.
Saying.
Right.
With iPod or with iOS or with Windows Phone, those are pretty much locked down to the native app markets.
That's true. Another point of differentiation here is that Amazon's going to vet every app, whereas in the Android market, today if you wanted to come up with a new live wallpaper, you could have it up by the end of the day. But Amazon's going to filter every app, kind of like Apple does, potentially fixing a problem of the Android App Store, which is that there's just so much crap in there still. There's so many half-assed applications, to be honest.
I'm trying to look at these things from two different perspectives. The first one is from the developer's point of view. Let's say we are developers working on a software. That would mean that we should, first of all, subscribe to both app stores, pay the initial fee, and then submit our software to both of the application stores. If we take a look at this from the consumer user point of view, let's say you want to buy or download an application. you would have to search in both places. Let's say Amazon has a better price because it has a lower cut. You download the application, you buy it. What happens with the updates? Will I be able to update my software purchased from Amazon using Google Market or vice versa? I mean, I don't know how these two will be able to work together as a one from the user's point of view.
It's very confusing for the user to be able to have to go through two app stores. I mean, eventually, if this app store becomes big, consumers will pledge their allegiance to one of them and stick with it probably, because most people don't want to fuss with two app stores.
Isn't it interesting though? Because I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
No, say it, Evan.
Because several years ago, before Apple's and the iPods and iPhone made their app store so big, there was a bunch of different app stores, third party like Fandango and Pocket Gear and whatever, and none of those were nearly as successful as when Apple brought it all together under one roof. And so it almost seems like consumers don't want choice in this scenario. They'd rather have convenience, as opposed to the other verticals where you wouldn't just want to have Walmart selling everything and have no other place to go for your electronics or your clothes or anything.
Yeah, that was very inconvenient in the days of Windows Mobile, when you could get your apps from like 5 different places. And then Microsoft did the Windows, it was so long, Windows Phone Marketplace for Mobile. That was the official name. Windows Mobile 6.5 App Store, which to this day has like 1,000 apps, maybe more by now. But they came in way too late, and everything was way too fragmented.
I never spent $1 in that store.
Yeah, neither did I. I mean, the apps there were, you had SBB Mobile Shell at like $30. It was insane. It's good software, but I mean, the pricing just wasn't right there.
Amazon, I think, could pull this off if they are starting to address from the very beginning all the, let's say, flaws of the Google market. For instance, in-app purchasing. There was a news bit this week, I think it was towards the weekend, when Google removed an application exactly because it referred to some in-app purchasing. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not going to develop on that, but if Amazon would allow in-app purchasing, or would give access to all of these things which Google doesn't permit on their own market, maybe they could have a big winner here. But again, I think it will be, first of all, contributing very much to fragmentation, and second, very, very confusing for the consumer. I mean, that's my point of view as a user.
On the other hand, Tony, just to take the opposite side of the coin, Amazon's got a lot of things going for it, obviously. Number one, they're Amazon. Number two, as we already talked about, they have a lot of experience in commerce. Number three, they have the advantage of hindsight. They can see what makes the Google market great and what makes it not so great. As you imply, in-app upgrades is a mess at times. App recommendations aren't great within the market. There's a lot of crap in there. So, I mean, Amazon, if anyone out there has an opportunity to do something better, perhaps Amazon is the company to do it. And perhaps they see that, and they've seen that, and they're finally going to execute on it. And who knows, maybe a year from now, we'll be using the Amazon App Store as our primary means of getting Android apps.
Yeah, and then we'll have the Best Buy App Store and then a Walmart App Store. It's gonna get ridiculous, I think. This is sort of opening a Pandora's box. I'm not sure we want to go here. And like I said before, it was never really that successful until Apple centralized everything into just one market that was easily accessible from the device.
Yeah, in that respect, it's definitely an uphill battle. Although I guess we shouldn't tell people about the Pocketnow App Store coming this July.
Didn't hear it from us. So one more thought on this Amazon thing. Will this then be a premium version of the Google market, with only certain applications from the Google market being doubled in the Amazon market? I've had an interesting discussion with somebody from the makers of the Tegra 2 chipset at the Mobile World Congress in Barcelona, and we've discussed about NVIDIA's App Store. And they told me that certain applications, those which would be developed especially for high-end Android devices, will be featured in the NVIDIA's App Store, but all purchasing will be done through the Google market. maybe Amazon will be a stripped down premium version of the Google market with only certain applications which meet certain demands or certain, I don't know, standards. It's just a bunch of thoughts in my head. I cannot think about it straight at this moment.
That's true. I mean, it could be for higher tier applications getting away from 99 cents and $2 an app and going back to $10, $15 apps, premium games, tuned perfectly for Tegra 2 chips, maybe even, magazine subscriptions that act as apps, something better quality than just, live wallpaper apps and, the like that you get. Cool. Well, let's move on from here. Definitely interesting, with the hope that Amazon brings something to the table that's better than what we have now, because we're always for that. All right, so let's talk about this Windows Phone 7 update that occurred this week, and then it was pulled back because it was bricking certain devices like the Samsung Focus. So this update isn't the big update to get IE9 and to get multitasking with fast app switching. It's not the update to get copy and paste. It's the update to allow those other things to happen. So it does really nothing to the user experience, and yet it's something that you must get in order to get the other features coming down the road.
Well, we're used to that on the desktop, aren't we? I mean, you receive like 100 different, minor updates from Windows before you get Service Pack 1 or Service Pack 2 or whatever.
Yeah, but I think that's a little bit more seamless because you can set it to automatically update. Whereas on Windows Phone 7, you get a pop-up notification, you plug into Zune, you download it. Granted, it's only a 10-minute process, but still, it's 10 minutes.
I think they sort of want to call it out. Like finally here we are doing over-the-air updates after having the capability for 5 or 10 years. So, they could do it in the background, but I think they sort of want people to know that they are, right on the ball with these upgrades. Well, this isn't really an upgrade, but update at least.
Well, except they're not on the ball. They were talking about this update for copy and paste. I think the first rumor coming from Microsoft was January, and now it's going to be probably 2 weeks from now in early March. Which brings an interesting question. Back in the days of Windows Mobile, legacy Windows Mobile, and Pocketnow used to be a site just for Windows Mobile, over-the-air updates just weren't possible. They built the mechanism I think, in Windows Mobile 6.5, but it was never used because there were so many levels of sort of requirements to get through to the phone. So there was the OEM, there was the carrier, and then there was, of course, Microsoft, all of which had to work in tandem to produce an update. And updates for Windows Mobile didn't come as frequently as we get on Android and on iOS, for example. But with Windows Phone 7, Microsoft sort of had this new promise. All the hardware is going to be very similar. The requirements are very much the same so that we can more easily push through updates. And the question, I guess, is Microsoft making good on its promise to bring forth these updates in a more easy way, in a more timely way?
Well, it all depends. As you implied earlier, with Windows Phone 7, it's the same situation. I mean, there are also carriers involved, so mainly carriers involved, and there are certain things even I don't perfectly get. I mean, Microsoft is sending out clearly the message that you will receive the update notification if you are using a SIM card or if you are on an operator which is a partner to Windows Phone 7. Now, Adam filmed the video of demonstrating the update process, and he clearly stated that the device which he used had no SIM card at all. So and my guess is that somewhere at some point the phone, regardless if it uses Wi-Fi or data connection, sends a poll at a certain interval or receives a notification from a Microsoft server saying that, hey, there's an update available. It's just that I don't know why, and I personally haven't received the update notification yet, why certain regions, certain devices do receive the update and why certain devices do not. This is the first thing. And the second thing I want to say is Microsoft is emphasizing so hard and writing it out in bold letters that this is a huge thing for them. I mean, yes, it is. It's a big project for pushing out updates to I don't know how many devices, but to all of the devices, which is something which they didn't do in the past. And I think that we can take a look at this first update before the first update from two perspectives. We can look at it like a prerequisite update, doing something on the phone which we don't know about, but preparing the phone for the Nodo update. Or two, we can look at it as a test, just to see, just for Microsoft to see that okay, the system is working and we can do it. And if there will be problems, let them be now, so we can address them before the big update. So, not really sure.
So WWAD, what would Apple do, or what would Google do? I mean, it just maybe I'm not giving Microsoft enough credit, but I just think it's a little bit haphazard to. After the fact, after millions of devices are in the hands of consumers, say, oh, we don't know if this is actually going, if your second scenario is true, Tony, we're not sure if this is going to work, so we are going to inconvenience every one of our users with this update that does nothing. Would Apple do something like that? I mean, they would ensure that before the consumer got the phone in their hand, the update process worked. Same with Google, you know?
There is one thing... with Windows Phone 7 updates, carriers have the opportunity to skip one update. So if a carrier says, I want to skip this update, he skips it. But he has to deliver at the second update. So there cannot be more than 2 updates left out by the carrier. And if this update actually does something to the phone, carriers cannot skip it. But I've heard that some of the carriers might be able to skip it, which then takes me back to to where I started. It doesn't actually do anything. It's just a simple test. So again, mixed thoughts.
Do you know how this works, Tony? I mean, does Microsoft have a file, and then they send the file to a rep at AT&T and T-Mobile and Vodafone or whatever, and say, hey, can you guys look at this and deploy it on March 1st? Or do they just send it out without, consulting the carriers?
Well, so far, here's what I know. I know of 2 things. First of all, that the update will come from Microsoft, and you only receive the notification from your carrier. If we are to listen to what Microsoft is saying, that you will need a SIM on a partner carrier. Second thing I know is from Microsoft itself, which they published on their blog, that yes, these updates will need to be tested by carriers. So let's say Microsoft sends out the update to carriers, then they field test it for a couple of days, they give the okay, and then the actual update rollout process begins. So it's somewhat like you imply, Brendan.
So is the implication here then that that HD2s that have shoehorned Windows Phone 7 on them are not going to be able to get this update?
I don't know. To be quite honest, I don't know. And I don't think that there will be a mechanism to stop the update, because from what I've heard and from what I've read on these HD2s running Windows Phone 7, they are actually emulating a legacy Windows Phone 7 device. I think it's the HD7. So the system, the carrier, everything sees the device as it was an actual Windows Phone 7 device. So my biggest guess is that yes, they will receive some updates, but I haven't heard of any reports yet.
That's interesting. Very interesting indeed. I guess the update process is as cumbersome, if we even want to call this cumbersome, compared to Android. So, I mean, we've seen this, and this is a topic of conversation today. The Epic 4G, the Captivate, finally are getting Froyo. But Google released this Froyo source code a long time ago, back last year. And yet it's taken this long. But, I think the carriers and Samsung especially needed to do things to get this update finally pushed out.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty big deal to deploy a completely new operating system to thousands and in some cases hundreds of thousands of devices. I mean, when you look in a lot of these databases like Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and even DivX certification, oftentimes they will separate the same device with the two operating system versions. So, say they'll have the D700, which is the Epic 4G. They'll have one version of it, which is Eclair, and then one version of it, which is 2.2 Froyo. So, there's such a significant difference there that they almost look at them as two different pieces of hardware.
Ah.
I'm not sure you guys remember. Sorry, Brandon.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I'm not sure if you guys remember this. I remember it because I covered it. It was a story back at the, I think it was mid-January, and it came from Android Police. And somebody allegedly close to the situation has reported that these actual Froyo updates for US carrier variants of the Galaxy S are being held back because, let's say, of a conspiracy among carriers. And the guy broke down the updates into three categories. First one, it was the critical updates, which resolve some critical bugs, and these usually are sent out for free from Samsung to the carrier. There were the maintenance updates, which fixed some of the bugs which users reported towards the carrier, and these have certain costs tied. And there were some feature updates which cost the most, and Android 2.2 Froyo was in this category. Now, Samsung, I think it was 2 or 3 days after the story, came public and said, no, Samsung is not requesting any fees for the Froyo updates. We are giving them out for free, promise. And this was half of the quotes. I can look up the whole quote. So I think there might be something involved, some truth here, because yeah, first of all, the devices hardware-wise are the same, but there are a lot of carrier customizations, bloatware, which we call them bloatware. They have to test it at a certain device level on a certain number of test devices. This could, let's say, take 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, 2 months, but come on, we're 6, 7 months. How long are we after the Froyo launch? 1 year?
Long time.
Well, that's assuming, though, that everything goes smoothly in the testing. I mean, you look at a phone like the Fascinate, they're taking out all the Google stuff and putting in Bing, besides all the whatever changes that come along with the versioning update. So I think that there is quite a bit involved here, and I'm not so sure that there's a conspiracy of any sort going on among the carriers. I'm not sure what that would what they would really gain from that. Pushing people into new hardware maybe, but in general, I think that they see that it's beneficial to get these updates out quickly, and they really are trying to, because they see that people are, there is quite a there's quite an uproar now that it's been so long.
All right, well, let's move on from here. A final thought, and then we'll move on. I feel like the teams responsible for issuing these updates are relatively small, and I say that because shortly after the release of the source code of a new version of Android, you can go to a site like XD Developers or Android Central Forums and get the new version of the software working almost perfectly within like 2 days, because all of the developers are pulling their resources together and getting it done. I just feel like these companies like Samsung, I'm not going to say HTC, their teams for upgrades are just not as well equipped as they should be to quickly get these updates out.
But you also remember their standards are higher. If they have to have these things like, rock solid or what they consider rock solid, while on XDA, people will take something that's, 95% working.
It's a good thing to remember. I guess they're trying to keep people from not calling customer service lines and returning their phones. And if something is off, then it's not fair game. All right, so next up on the list, last week, Sammy from the Jersey Shore went back to the house. Oh, wrong podcast.
Oh, jeez.
No, I don't watch Jersey Shore, except every week. Anyway.
I was going to say the worst part is you could keep talking about that. You didn't have to stop there.
Oh, Well, what are your thoughts on? I'm just kidding. Okay, let's move on. More stuff about the HTC Inspire 4G. Not doing great with speed benchmarks. We talk about this every week, it seems, because I'm frankly bitter about it, that the Atrix 4G and the Inspire 4G, which are the HSPA Plus phones on AT&T's network, in most cases, and I'm saying most because I've read lots of reviews out there, can't do 4G yet because there is no 4G. And what's worse is that it doesn't support, specifically the Inspire 4G, doesn't support HSUPA, which is the technology that allows the device to upload almost as fast as it can download. And no one really knows why. And it's just so unfortunate because we've got a phone that's supposed to be faster when it's in fact slower. If you root the phone, you can enable HSUPA, but it's just ridiculous at this point. I mean, there's a rumor out there that March 1st is the day when a lot of people are going to see this HSPA Plus, and that is about 3 days away. I have a feeling that's not true.
I mean, did they disable this from the software level, or is it disabled from the deep radio level inside the ROM?
Sounds like the software, because it seems relatively easy to turn back on.
Yeah, Gabe said that it's possible to enable it on a lot of Android phones for AT&T.
Gabe is our resident genius. Side note. Yeah, and so presumably they disabled HSUPA because they expect the phone to run on HSPA Plus, which sort of takes care of both uploads and downloads. But maybe the deployment of the HSPA Plus is just not happening as fast. But they should tell us about that. Send out a press release saying, you know, we understand customers aren't receiving 4G speeds. Well, here's when they will.
I feel like AT&T sort of, they got caught, you know, holding the bag in some cases, like, or not holding the bag necessarily, but they started feeling left behind. You know, Verizon was moving forward with LTE.
Yep.
Sprint already had WiMAX going. Mm-hmm. I think that the gamble had been at AT&T that people weren't buying T-Mobile's whole, you know, we're 4G with our HSPA Plus, and then that gamble was wrong. People were buying it, and
yep.
And all of a sudden AT&T started to look like the slowest network out there. And so they had to come out with that report that said, hey, we're actually the fastest, you know, on average over the entire population. It was, you know, a very specific case scenario where they were the fastest. And now I think that there's a lot of pressure on them to start deploying these 4G devices even before the 4G network is completely ready.
Yep, that sounds right to me.
Yeah, exactly on the same note, as Evan said, the 4G network is ready. AT&T is saying that it's ready. The phone hardware is ready for the speeds. It's just disabled from the software point of view. Now, we have to think about it like this. Was it an omission or was it premeditated? Because if it was an omission, we can see a small update coming up shortly. But if it was premeditated, then I think AT&T is not really ready for these devices getting on the network from the network logistics point of view.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think AT&T will argue it's the same as someone, you know, in the middle of America buying a Verizon LTE device. They're not going to get LTE service right away.
Yeah, but the difference is that Verizon will gladly show you an LTE map and say, here's where you can get it and here's where you can't. Whereas AT&T is using very generic terminology saying, you'll get it if you have enhanced backhaul in your area, whatever that means.
And wherever that is.
Right. I agree that they should be a little bit more transparent.
Great minds think alike. Yeah. Okay, great. Well, hopefully there will be some good news about this soon, because Inspire 4G, Atrix 4G are some hot devices that I think a lot of people have their eye on. But I'm sure they want to make sure they're making the right choice about, you know, whether they do these faster data speeds. So let us move on. Just a brief note, this week, Samsung finally pushed out the Froyo update for the Epic 4G and the Captivate. People have been waiting so long for that to happen. And so, we just want to say congratulations if you have a Captivate or an Epic 4G. You're now living on the bleeding edge of Froyo.
Yeah. Just wait for Gingerbread.
Yeah, Gingerbread's the one to watch. You won't be able to ever get it, but if you root your phone, you can.
I thought Ice Cream is the one we're waiting for now.
Oh, yeah. Well, we don't know what Ice Cream will bring, so maybe it'll be a step backwards, which isn't likely anyway.
And speaking of that, what do you guys think? What do you think Jay is going to be? Jello. It can't be Jello, so and it's not going to be Jelly Donut, so I'm thinking it's got to be Jelly Beans.
Why can't it be Jello?
Jello's trademarked.
Oh, snap. I think Jelly Beans sounds good to me.
Tony, thoughts?
No, nothing. I keep thinking, but...
Hey, Tony, have you ever had those jelly beans that taste like cotton candy?
Nope.
Wow. What about you, Evan?
I think I have. They're fantastic.
Did you ever eat ice cream with mustard and pepperoni?
What? Is that a joke?
No, I did. And I have the picture to prove it.
Okay, is it good? Is it one of those weird things that happens to taste good?
No, you actually want to brush your teeth 10 times 5 minutes after you eat it. So, I don't know.
Was this when you were really intoxicated, or were you?
No, it was part from another part of my life, and I just had the opportunity and I couldn't pass. I say, okay, I'm not gonna die tomorrow without eating a mustard and pepperoni ice cream.
Wow.
Don't ever try that, guys. Really, seriously.
All right. Well, won't judge you too much on that. Sounds like it's something you did when you were young, a younger Tony.
Yeah.
So, let's move on. The HTC Arrive, which is really the same thing as the 7 Pro, has landed on Sprint. And I think it was in early January when the HTC Arrive trademark hit the U.S. Trademark and Patent Office. We were sort of thinking it may be a new version of the Sense interface. We didn't expect them to call the 7 Pro the Arrive, but here we are. It's got the same specs. It's got the 1 gigahertz Snapdragon CPU, 576 megabytes of RAM, WVGA screen. We reviewed the 7 Pro European version, and you can see it right now on the site. But this is basically the same thing, except it can't do simultaneous voice and data, and it's on Sprint.
And it can't do WiMAX, right?
Can't do WiMAX, which is actually kind of surprising. How do you guys think this will stack up in terms of other current Sprint high-end smartphones? Although without the 4G, it's questionably not their highest.
Well, I'm not looking at this from this point of view. I'm looking at this from the following 2 points of view. First of all, we got CDMA support for Windows Phone 7, which was promised at the launch, and 5 months after, now we finally have it. So this is the first one. And the second one, the Arrive and the 7 Pro are the same. It's not that much about hardware, but it will open up some new markets to Microsoft to sell Windows Phone 7 and Windows Phone 7 hardware through carriers to another segment of the market. And hopefully this will a little bit boost their sales.
I think that's what they're hoping for. Exposing a whole new realm of people to Windows Phone 7 and sort of continuing the momentum of the platform, which is, it's good for Windows Phone 7.
I mean, the device is great. I've played with it at the Mobile World Congress, and I think many people which are not Venue Pro always hurts when I talk about it. But to those who held back for the Dell Venue Pro, or that they can't buy it because it's on AT&T, I mean, it's a great QWERTY device. Now, Microsoft only needs to sort out the landscape thing, which you guys talked about, I think, 2 weeks ago with Adam. But else, it's a great device.
Indeedy. Well, there's not much else to say about the HTC Arrive. It's available 3 days ago, so go
not
ahead.
available, announced, right?
Oh,
I don't think it's available until the
It's
20th.
on pre-order, and it will start shipping. I don't know exactly when, but I know that it's available on pre-order.
yeah, there you go. Pre-order.
I think it's the 20th that it ships.
The 20th of March?
I believe so. I
Wow.
would be willing to bet you $1.
It has to be after the Nodo updates rollout.
True. True. Because it ships with the copy and paste, right?
Exactly.
All right. Moving on. February 24th, we were talking about yet another delay of the HTC Thunderbolt. This thing was supposed to launch so many different times, and it's so funny because the dates we were talking about for the launch were like February 24th, February 28th, and we're complaining about 6 days. Well, when you're waiting for not your dream phone, but the one after that, according to HTC, you gotta keep the calendar crossed off when you're getting close to the release. I was at
Well played.
what's that?
I said, well played, Brandon.
Oh, thanks. I was at Best Buy on Friday looking at the Zoom, and they had an empty, lonely, sad kiosk for the HTC Thunderbolt with no phone attached. So,
But they had it.
do you think they had it in inventory?
No, not
No,
yet.
because I mean, if the problem's with the battery, no one's going to have them, because they still need to flash them with the new firmware.
Do you think that they ever run into a situation, and maybe this is one, where HTC or Verizon says, "Oh crap! Every single HTC Thunderbolt that has been produced needs a new ROM before it goes out," and some guys in a warehouse somewhere sit there with thousands and thousands of Thunderbolts reflashing them.
I don't
I
think
think
so.
it's all automated, but yeah, I think that does happen.
I think it can't happen because they go through a field testing process both at the manufacturer and at the carrier level. So I think it's pretty not possible. But this is just me.
It would seem like, I mean, it would be so expensive to do and time consuming. And even if they do have an automated process, someone's got to plug the phone in, and take it out of the box. And if there's 100,000 phones in a warehouse, then someone's going to be really, really upset about that.
But if it turns out that it's one of the carrier customization applications or some carrier customization bit eating the battery, then that's another story.
Yeah, that's true. And don't forget that they could just push an OTA update so that when people turn on their Thunderbolt, it says, "Hey, you need to update your software now, or your battery life's going to be bad."
Yeah, that's not real great for the user experience, though, is it?
Oh no!
Right. Absolutely.
But let's remember here that I don't think that they actually announced a date. I mean, these are not delays from. It's not like Verizon said like it's coming out on this day and then has had to backtrack. These are all rumored releases, and then the rumored releases kept getting pushed.
Correct.
Well, sometimes we construe rumors as the truth, or at least I do personally. So I'm sad.
Well, the latest news, anyways, is that it's not even March 4, but I think it's March 10 now.
We better move on. Someone's going to stop listening because they're so upset. Okay, well, let us move on. Let's talk a little bit about iOS. On March 2nd, which is going to be Wednesday, they're going to talk about, they being Apple, the new iPad, but they might also be talking about iOS 4.3, which brings, if you hear a sound, there's a printer in this room being used. iOS 4.3 brings these new gestures to the table where you can sort of pinch with 5 fingers or 4 fingers to get back to the home screen. You can swipe right and left with 4 fingers. And the idea is that 4.3 will be talked about or perhaps even released, but probably not until there's new hardware.
Yeah, saying this, I think we talked about this 2 weeks ago when I said that it will be pretty difficult to have 3 or more finger gestures on the iPhone's 3.5-inch screen. But now in this context, at the context of maybe new hardware with maybe bigger screen, maybe 3 or 4 finger gestures could be possible.
Mm-hmm. That would be great. And with a rumored larger 4-point-inch screen. Did I just say 4-point-inch? 4-inch screen, edge-to-edge display. I mean, then these gestures make so much more sense when you've got a bigger screen to work with.
Right.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, I think it's pretty likely that we'll see a bigger screen on the next iPhone.
Yeah, but the question is, will they keep the outer dimensions the same and only make the screen bigger, or will the iPhone 5 be physically bigger than the iPhone 4?
I suspect that the resolution will stay this. Oh, you're just talking about the dimensions of the phone, not the resolution of the screen.
Mm-hmm.
I think the dimensions will be slightly bigger, but some of it will be taken up by the screen moving closer to the edges. That seems like Apple style.
Okay, I'm going to do a test here. I'm going to measure the width of a 4-inch screen and then put it up next to the iPhone's 3.5-inch screen and see if it fits within the confines of the width. And actually it does. If they do a true edge-to-edge screen, they would be able to fit, let me get the other dimension here, they would be able to fit a 4-inch screen on the current hardware.
Now, this is a personal question of mine. Can you also measure the tallness? And because we had some rumors that maybe Apple would be ditching the home button. Could the new bigger 4-inch screen fit between the speaker and the home button in case Apple doesn't ditch the home button?
Okay, so it just so happens that a 4-inch screen is as tall as a credit card. So if you hold up a credit card to your iPhone, you'll see that they wouldn't have to remove the button. They'd have to move the speaker up probably 2 millimeters. They may have to move the button down 1 millimeter, but it could work.
Now, this also depends somewhat on aspect ratio, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can have a 4-inch screen that's a 16:9, or you can have a 4-inch that's 4:3.
Mm-hmm.
True. Well, they're likely to maintain the same aspect ratio with the iPhone 4, which is... I'm not good enough at math to figure that out. Very good. So maybe some cool stuff to come out for iPhone peeps on what? On March 2nd.
Peeps or sheeps?
No. Well, then you would be a sheep, Evan.
That's fine. That, you know what? Now that I own an iPhone, I can make fun even more.
Yeah, it's a good phone. It'd be even better if they allowed you to do things on the home screen that you can do on Android.
Yeah.
I just hope they will implement the nose gestures.
Oh, yeah, the nose gestures. Well, I've got a big nose, so that would be very functional. All right, so let's move on. One more topic, then we're going to take a couple questions on Twitter. So there is a Android 2.3.3 update for the Nexus S, which people are saying makes the phone look like it has jaundice, which of course is yellow tinted. But then Google's saying that it's not a mistake. We wanted to warm up the screen a little bit. I used the Nexus S, or previously used the Nexus S, for weeks and weeks at a time. And definitely compared to other screens, it's cold. The whites are so white. It almost has a blue feel to it. But I kind of like it. It's very like high-techy feel. Pictures, the colors are kind of off. But what do you guys prefer, a cooler screen or a warmer screen?
I'm with you. After your email, actually, I was playing around with the colors on several of my screens, and I had one screen that looked a lot more cool. I thought it was whiter than the other ones, but then I adjusted my center screen somewhat, and I was able to make that have even crisper whites, and that made the one that previously looked whiter look somewhat warm. So I found that I prefer colds, a more natural white.
It seems that cold provides better contrast.
I'd say, well, okay, let me say that I don't like AMOLED, Super AMOLED, or Super AMOLED Plus screens, and here's why. Because I don't find the colors to be matching the ones you can see in reality. I mean, yeah, the whites are either bluish or yellowish, red is too vibrant, text is jaggy, but yeah, they offer great contrast. And getting back to this color temperature thing, I think if I remember well that there was an application, or it was some kind of a hack back in the days of the Nexus 1, which allowed you to actually adjust the color temperature of your Android smartphone. And I think I'm gonna give you the link, Brandon, to post it so that people can take a look into it.
Sure, that'd be great. Yeah, I mean, people have their preferences. There are trade-offs with every screen. Super AMOLED, AMOLED, and Super AMOLED Plus all have ridiculously rich blacks, and that's at a trade-off of color quality in some cases. The pictures kind of look a little bit artificial. I'll tell you what, though, HTC's Super LCD, I think, is the perfect sweet spot. It's on the Inspire 4G, on the Desire HD, and a lot of other HTC phones. But the blacks are really black. They're not as good as Super AMOLED. The colors are really, really rich, much richer than I've seen on any LCD. And it just, the screen's evenly lit. It looks awesome. What screen do you prefer, Evan? And you're probably going to say Retina, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Retina display is just about the best that I've seen. I mean, if you ever have it sitting on a table and it's on at like an angle, you still have an almost perfect viewing angle. So yeah, I think it's definitely one of the best. But that may be more of Apple's manufacturing than actually the quality of the screen, just because they were able to get it so close to the glass on top. But
yeah, as you imply, there are so many different characteristics of a screen, like viewing angle and contrast and power consumption and color reproduction, and resolution, of course. So there's a lot of different variables that manufacturers have to work with. And yeah, the Retina display is quite nice. Although if you put it next to like a Super AMOLED, the blacks look almost gray on a Retina display, or kind of a darkish gray.
I'll have to straight from the back here and say that for me, the best display is LG's Nova display on the Optimus Black. It has very, very rich colors. It has a high brightness level and also deep contrast. So I had the occasion to see it in Barcelona compared to Apple's iPhone 4 display and also compared to my device's displays, and it really is great.
Seems that the Nova display is almost a cross between AMOLED and LCD. Would you say that?
Something like that, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Very good. All right, so that ends this segment. Let's take it to Twitter. We've got a handful of questions here, none of which I've actually seen before. So let's just let's go to this one from the Kid 1990. Would Bada ever become the next Palm OS, or do you think Palm has their game under control because of joining HP? Well, that is to say that Bada, would Bada ever become the next Palm OS, or do you think Palm has their game under control because of joining with HP?
Yeah, what does that mean? If becoming the next Palm OS means that you sort of fade into the sunset.
Yeah, I think that's what... I think he's asking if Bada is going the way of Palm and it needs to be acquired by a major OEM.
No. Samsung knew exactly what it was doing with Bada, and I think so far it's quite pleased with the results.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Samsung has the power to maintain and sustain Bada.
Yeah, they're now probably almost as formidable as HTC in terms of volume of phones, if not better. So they have great management that know what they're doing, and we have yet to really see much of Bada here in the U.S. It's mostly a European thing, but I mean Bada is relatively solid for an OS that is running only on 2 phones out there. Let's see. Next question. From iSafari, sounds like an Apple user. Do you think HTC will make a phone that will be a true successor to the Evo 4G, dual core, better video, better screen? Well, certainly HTC is always going to make a phone better than their last generation. And if you listen to our last PocketCast, we were talking about sort of how disappointed we were in HTC from Mobile World Congress. That said, there is still a glimmer of hope that at CTIA, a device like the HTC Pyramid will be announced. which will bring a dual-core Snapdragon processor with a 960 by 540 display. So to answer your question, of course, they will make a true successor to the Evo 4G. Are there any other contenders, guys, for the next super high-end HTC phone besides the Pyramid?
I can't think of any, because whatever we have on the market is single core. And now, okay, Android is not fully supporting dual core at the moment, but it's where the future is. It's where everybody is going to. So I think the Pyramid is the next big thing we might see in maybe one month or so.
Sounds about right. What do you think, Evan? Anything better or equivalent to what could be the Pyramid coming out from HTC?
Better than the Pyramid?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. HTC is always going to have some high-end phones coming out, and I imagine that we'll see some at CTIA next month. But specifically, we haven't seen spy shots or specs or anything besides the Pyramid. So the specific follow-ups to the Evo 4G, meaning something on Sprint, a WiMAX powered device, I just don't know.
Sure. So
there was
oh, go ahead, Tony.
There was a news bit this weekend which came from Engadget, and it was talking about some HTC Droid Incredible 2, if I recall well, appearing on Verizon systems. Now, we had the Incredible S, which was launched at the Mobile World Congress, and they were all speculating about this being maybe a US variant. How about this new device would be actually the Pyramid?
I feel like you're talking about the Incredible 2?
Yeah.
I feel like that's going to be like the Incredible S. So, so that, we'll have to see, but it seems that it's not going to be their super high-end phone that we're all going to lust after. Very good. Let's move on to, we've got two more questions that I want to cover, so we keep this around 60 minutes. From Joker Chris 2000. Do you think the new smartphones and tablets are worth their very expensive pricing? They cost as much as a cheap PC. Well, Joker Chris 2000.
It's all relative. You must not have been around, a dozen years ago when cheap PCs were $1,000.
Yeah, and don't forget that high-end smartphones have always been extremely expensive, unsubsidized right when they come out. I mean, if you look at like the HTC Universal when it came out, I think maybe 2004, it was $1,000. And today we're seeing pricing on the new HTC phones around $1,000, and it's always going to be that way. Yeah, that's...
I think you have to look at it from this perspective. Smartphones and tablets these days are actual computers in small size, and everything which is produced in miniature packed into this, 100 and something meters per 50 something millimeters is a miniature of something which you are running on your computer, because you have some dual core processors right now which were in the PC age some 10 years ago or something. We're talking about 1 gigabytes of RAM, and I think you actually hold your computer in your hand, and for that you have to pay the price.
Exactly. But the thing that kind of is annoying for the consumer is that consumers of the future will have a smartphone, a tablet, a laptop, and maybe a desktop. So it's not like we can buy a smartphone and it replaces all these things. There's just,
There's a price for being mobile.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
The next question I need to do a second of research on. The question is from Mad Max HD. What happened to the AT&T Nexus S? I want one on AT&T 3G and on Negri Electronics. They're on pre-order, but there is no date. I'm trying to see after how many months from the T-Mobile Nexus 1, the AT&T Nexus 1 was released.
It's definitely still coming. We've seen it in quite a few agency databases already. So I think it would be within the next month.
Yeah.
But I don't. It's not going to be sold subsidized through AT&T probably.
Yeah, it's going to be same price. $529. Maybe they'll even bring that in a little bit. So let's see. It looks like.
Go on.
I was going to say, let's see, January. Let's see, January
27, I think.
February. Yeah, it came out January 27th at the T-Mobile Nexus One, and then February, March, April. Looks like about 3 months after we saw the AT&T version. So if you look at the Nexus S, applying the same general idea, it was released in mid-February, about a year later to be exact. So it looks like if there's going to be a Nexus One for AT&T, it would happen early May, maybe in April. Who knows? Maybe even in March. So it is probably most likely coming, as Evan said, but just a matter of waiting a little bit.
And let's not forget that it had already passed FCC. And
yeah.
I think the model number is GTI 9020 or something like that.
Yeah, 9020A.
Yeah, right.
9020A. Very good. So that is coming. So thank you guys that have asked questions on Twitter, and thank you, Evan and Tony, for joining the PocketCast here. And I don't think there are any final thoughts. Anything happening this week of note besides a potential bit of news about iOS 4.3 that you can think of?
Maybe we can have a surprise launch for the Thunderbolt.
Yeah, that's probably the only possibility out there. Maybe is the HTC Merge potentially coming out this week?
I don't think so.
It's close though. It's in Verizon systems now. It's taking pictures on Picasa. It's showing up in, it's gotten all its certifications.
That's another blah. I mean,
what I'm wondering though is where are these Samsung phones that we saw at CES? The 4G LTE on Verizon, and then the Infuse on AT&T.
Well, I asked around at the Verizon booth, and they just kept on telling me that it will come, but no time frame was told.
Is the Verizon 4G Samsung phone 4.5-inch screen?
No,
that's the Infuse.
What's interesting is that it's unclear what the model number of this Verizon phone is. Everyone thinks it's the i520, but I was looking at pictures the other day, and that Engadget took in their hands-on. And on the About screen, the phone itself reports being the i510. And we know that there are two phones out there, an i510 and an i520. And presume, both those model numbers would seem to make them, rife for Verizon. So I'm thinking that perhaps the 4G LTE is the 510, and then maybe the 520 is going to be the follow-up to the Fascinate. So, whatever Verizon's version of the Galaxy S2 is.
Good detective work.
Absolutely.
Very good stuff. All right, guys. Well, that concludes the PocketCast number 5. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for having us, Brandon.
Sure.
Thanks for the invitation. Bye-bye.
Adios.